Hey, aloha, folks, and welcome to this edition of Five Questions, conversation with newsmakers in our community that's found right here on the morning show on News Radio 830 KHVH, also on the front page of HawaiiReporter.com. It's our special guest today. It's our pleasure to welcome in John Carroll, who is candidate for U.S. Senate, but also has a long and storied time of history with our great state of Hawaii. And John, it's pleasure to have you on board. How are you doing today?
Well, Rick, it's marvelous to be with you, and I really appreciate this opportunity very much.
Well, tell you what, John, what we always like to do with our friends is start off with a little bit about yourself. Would you mind sharing, please?
Not at all. My dad was in charge of rehabilitating Japanese chemical industries after World War II, so I was over there. We didn't have enough room in Tokyo for our whole family. We had 5 children, so they left me in a ski resort for about 3.5 months, and you know how I must have hated that. So finally, my dad says either get a job or go back to the mainland and go to college. So I was 18 at the time, or 17 actually when we went there. So I go down to Tokyo and I get a job as a merchant seaman, and I ended up over in Honolulu, as luck would have it. Did a walk-on scholarship here. So that's how I basically came to even be in Hawaii at all. After I got here, I had a number of things happen, including graduating from U.S., getting my teaching degree there. I went to jet fighter training after that, came back, and the people at the National Guard, Air Guard, said, we want you to go fly at Hawaiian Airlines. So I had no desire to fly a prop-driven airplane at that point because we were the only jet pilots in the world. But they said, well, you know, they hire new flight attendants every summer, so we went right on over there and joined up. So I had 32 years flying at Hawaiian. I was supposed to go to law school at the same time I got the chance to go to jet fighter training. And because there was an age cutoff, I went to the flight school instead. So ultimately, I did go to law school, graduated, came back, and again, as luck would have it, I was on the street with Bob Fukuda, who used to be the U.S. attorney under Nixon, and he said, John, do you want to run for Congress? And I said, well, yeah. And but I was thinking like 5 years from now, and about 2 weeks later, there's this big banner headline, Carroll for Congress. Patsy Miggs comment, who the hell is John? So anyway, that started it all. I ended up going into the, ultimately I lost that race, but I beat Jimmy Kealoha by about 5,000 votes. And my military background came into play because of the Vietnam War.
Right.
I got elected 4 times to the State House of Representatives here, and then in 1 term in the State Senate, became party chairman. Then, of course, during this whole time, I was both practicing law and flying for Hawaiian Airlines. I actually had to retire from Hawaiian in 1989, and I had set up a company to fly charters, and that morphed into a supply company supplying pilots to Japan Airlines and All Nippon Airways. Basically, I pretty much stayed out of politics other than being party chairman from 80 to 82 when Reagan got elected. And then I basically got quite interested in going back to politics after I saw what was happening here, and I backed up Linda Lingle I've actually held signs for her in 1998, and again when she ran in, then I ran for U.S. Senate after that against Dan Akaka on the basis of the fact that they were going to pass the Akaka bill, and I filed a lawsuit, and then Lingle backed off from me and the party with it from my endorsement against Dan Akaka back in 2000. We probably would have won that race had she not done that. She became governor in 2002, and I ran against her on several issues, all of which remain in place at this time. The net result of what I'm talking about is I've had 32 years at Hawaiian Airlines as a pilot, 34 years in the military, which include tanks, jet fighters, and 13 years as Judge Advocate General for both the Hawaii Army and Air National Guard. And then I have 46 years practicing law. So and then we've been involved in international business at that time. I've watched carefully what's happened, and I just feel that at this time, based on where the state is economically, the jobless, the homeless, that it's necessary to have leadership that's going to take us in a totally new direction. Constitutionally sound principles have got to be applied, and the reason that I'm running for U.S. Senate is I don't see that happening. I've asked Sam Sloan and other guys, even like yourself, to run for U.S. Senate, do what I want to get done, but I don't have any takers. So rather than just bail out and say I quit, I'm doing it myself.
All right, we're talking with John Carroll. He's a candidate for U.S. Senate, and this edition of 5 Questions. So, John, we have 5 questions for you and maybe a couple of minutes on each, if you wouldn't mind. And then I also understand that coming up very soon, you're going to have an event that people should know about. Let's chat about that now before we get into our questions.
Oh, terrific. Yeah, thank you so much. It's going to be at Pinky's Bar and Grill, which is in Kaneohe, near the Marine Corps Air Station. Mm-hmm. It's Friday night from 5:30 to 8:30, and it's going to be refreshments, and we would certainly invite everyone to come. Asking people for money is the hardest thing that I have to do in politics, and we would certainly love to have everybody come, and they can call 358-3414, and we can get tickets to them, and would very much seek their support.
And John, do you have a website that people can visit as well?
Oh, yes, it's www.Carroll, Carroll, number 4 or the word 4, Senate.com, and actually the ticket information is there, and they can actually buy them online too, so I forgot about that.
No worries at all. Okay, we have a few minutes for each question. John, I'm going to just jump right on in. I think the first one out of 5 questions is the obvious one, and you may have articulated this already, but maybe encapsulate it for us. Exactly, John, why are you running for the U.S. Senate seat?
Well, first of all, there's so many things that need to be done here. The number one thing is the Jones Act. If we have these shipping restrictions removed, this place can be like Hong Kong or Singapore. Now, people say, well, we're not like either one because we're not close to the Asian continent. But the fact is, we're dead center in world trade. And I'm talking about England, Belgium, as well as Seoul and Tokyo. So, and with the speed of ships now, and not to mention the speed of aircraft, we are in an absolutely perfect place to be doing worldwide business. I think that if we get rid of the Jones Act restrictions, and I will ask, first of all, to get rid of them as far as Hawaii is concerned. And by the way, for those who don't understand what the Jones Act is, it's a federal law that says if a ship is not built in America, manned by a 70% American crew, owned by Americans, flagged in America, and maintained in America, it cannot travel in interstate commerce. Now, that is supposedly because we're protecting our merchant fleet, and that right now happens to be total nonsense. The U.S. government people are not even using Jones Act ships for the last 2 major engagements in the the Middle East. Mm-hmm. The second thing is that the business climate here is not good. It's really, there's too much regulation. There's too much cost for doing business, and that can also be changed pretty radically if we open up our doors and start morphing towards what I would call the Singaporean model, economic model, because they have Fortune 500 companies there, and we can attract those people here with the right climate and getting rid of the Jones Act restrictions, which have totally negated the agricultural industry and hampered virtually everyone else unless you belong to Matson.
Talking with John Carroll, of course, candidate for U.S. Senate, in this edition of 5 Questions here on KHVH Radio, and also here on the homepage of HawaiiReporter.com. Let's talk a little bit about the Akaka bill, John, if you wouldn't mind, for question number 2. And really, what is the source of your opposition, and what do you hope to accomplish in the U.S. Senate regarding the Akaka bill? Well,
first of all, let me say this. I really think Dan Akaka is one of the finest gentlemen that I've ever known in my whole life. I knew him and both his brother Abraham. And I know that what he did in creating the Akaka bill, he did out of the goodness of his heart. Unfortunately, he and the other folks, including Linda Lingle, whom I'm running against, have failed to look at the history of what happened by the Ali'i back in 1840. There was a constitution passed at that time, and the preamble says that God has made nations of all men of one blood, one color, to live together in peace and blessedness, or words that may not be exact quote, but that's pretty much the essence of it. If you look at the case law through the rest of the next, from 1840 up to 1893, there's one case, Rex v. Booth, in which there is a racial thing. I won't go into it, but other than that one, there is no racial division. All of the case law, dictum, and so forth talks about men of are everybody's equal. There are no more chiefs, there's no more ali'i, no more kanaka ma'ole. So people don't understand that, and they think that having two separate sovereign nations side by side in an 11,000 square mile enclave just makes absolutely no sense at all.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to that, in 1881, they had a Homestead Act, and everyone who was qualified, reasonably, healthy enough to go and work a piece of land was able to get their leasehold property and ultimately take it in fee simple. Now that included everybody, whether they were Kanaka or whatever. It could be a British seaman or whatever. But in this case, one of the major issues for me is the fact that we have all of these folks that are on Hawaiian leasehold lands. They've got the overseer named Hawaii Homes Commission, and they really do not have control over their own lives, and plus they cannot pass it down below the 25%. So what I'm going to do as senator is to create an amendment to the Akaka bill, because I want him to get credit for this. And that is what I'm going to do, is gut it and take out everything that has to do with the division of races and basically make it the federal law that every person who owns who's on a leasehold property will have the right will have, number one, the right to own it and to pass it down to anybody within their own family. The only caveat I intend to put in is that they will have, if it's going to be sold from out of that family, it'll have to go to someone of part Hawaiian ancestry, but they would simply have to prove it the same way they would prove ancestry at this time. In addition to that, there's about 14,000 people who are qualified to get homestead land and do not have it. And I believe we may have to cut loose some state lands or possibly federal lands to make sure that everyone who's qualified can get that land and get it as soon as reasonably possible.
Again, with John Carroll in our series of 5 questions, we actually had to ask question number 3 regarding the Jones Act, which John has already alluded to. However, what I'd like to do is get into a couple of things regarding service and the election process itself. John, and again, time is ticking by, but I would like to find out from you, and many others have asked this question, is being a Republican in Hawaii a detriment? It comes up all the time, my man, believe me.
Well, put it this way, it can be a detriment. It depends how you utilize it. When I was in the State House, and not too many people know this, but working with Tadao Beppu, with Gene King, with Richard Kawakami, and guys like Richard Garcia, even Tony Kumura, I was able to get past virtually all of the environmental law that we have now. I put in the first green sea turtle bill and monk seal protection back in '70. I put in the Shoreline Protection Management Act, the Clean Water Act, the Clean Air Act, actually the Sunshine Bill, which required openness in government. Those were all originally offered by me, and so in some only a couple of them pass under my name. But if you look at the standing committee reports, my name will be on every one of them. And I feel, I could go to my grave today knowing that we did actually clean up the coastlines. That cost me the votes from, not only votes, but money from Sugar Planters and Castle and Cook. But there was, I'm sure you're old enough to remember, they have, like Hakalau, every mill would have this dead spot in front of it where the bagasse was being pumped in. And as a fighter pilot, I'd go out about 250 miles out to sea and go down to about 50 feet to come in to test our radar. And down there, 250 miles to sea, I'd see these huge beds of bagasse floating around. And I thought, if I ever can do anything about this, I'm going to. So that was one of the first things I did. And the bill that I passed was a clean water bill. I think Gene King got it passed. Forced the sugar planters to silt all of that bagasse on land so that whatever went into the ocean was clean water. And so now when you fly down these coastlines, you don't see that anymore. But in those days, up till about 1978 or so, it was really pilau.
We have just a couple of minutes remaining, John. I sure would like to get your response to a couple more questions.
Please.
And reason why we want to learn more about you and your candidacy. And question number 4, and briefly stated, can you assess the state of our nation?
Well, I think we're in a deplorable state right now. I think the leadership by Barack Obama, I was frankly glad to see a Howley get elected, and I was thinking he's going to do great things, but he's been a tremendous disappointment. I think the socialization that's taking place is apparent. I don't have time to go into it, but there are different things that are coming out of there which basically are going after our basic freedoms. I feel that we're way over our heads in terms of how much money we owe. I think that a lot of the things that we're doing, including troop deployments, building up the national indebtedness, are dead wrong, and we've got to change that around to where it's going to make some kind of sense. We should not be giving money, I don't think, to people like Pakistan and Egypt. I really don't even feel that even Israel, who is our ally, does not really need money from us right now. I think we've got to get a lot more money here. I mean, keeping our budget, our federal budget, in a position where it should be. I also feel that the entitlements are totally out of whack in terms of nationally, and in terms of, if we can talk Obamacare or this new medical program that they have, what's happened in Hawaii, and I have my hats off to the Democrats for this one thing. I think they really got it right here. Employers should be paying, and then we should have a vibrant economy where people are working. And then if we have some poor people that need to be cared for, we do it. But I think that constitutionally, we've got to get back to really fundamental constitutional issues. If I could just tell you one thing that it relates to the Jones Act, but Chief Justice Marshall in 1801 came out and said, regardless of the location of the states or the ports, every state should have equal access to interstate commerce with the other states, nations, and the Indian tribes. That's right out of the U.S. Constitution, and nothing could be more unconstitutional than having no pipelines, no highways, and no railroads, and still have these restrictions to Hawaii. And I'm just absolutely furious that they have not done anything about this, including Mrs. Lingle.
In just about a minute or so, John, can you cite the number one, for question number 5, number one absolute priority you have as serving as a United States Senator from Hawaii?
Well, number one is absolutely getting rid of the Jones Act restrictions, and then number 2, well, that is number 1, and I think I've elucidated on that one.
Okay, just want to make sure that we understand completely. Hey, how about your website address again, and any telephone number information too, John?
Okay, Keith Roman is our chairman. His phone number is 358-3414. Our website is www.carroll, number 4, or word 4, senate.com. And they can get a hold of me if they need me through those numbers.
Well, listen, John, it's been a pleasure. I thank you very much for taking the time today, and I'm sure we'll have a chance to chat again before Election Day. So
I certainly hope so.
We wish you all the best. Thanks so very much.
Rick, thank you so much. My pleasure.
Okay, John, take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye now.
Aloha.